Hi, it's Monday 26th of February. I'm here with Richard Ward, Joe Grills and Mark Dobson, all board members of the Hartlepool United Supporters Trust. We're going to have a latest update after the meeting with the club. Everyone was hugely disappointed to learn that the Trust didn't really think that the talk of a new investor was optimistic. It's not completely off the table, is it?
Well, no, that was more specific to the Swedish investor.
Yeah.
As we were in the meeting with Pam, she was clear that people that are still interested, she's brought in the extra solicitor so that she can widen the net, cast the net further wide, and hopefully that will bring in more interest. But as Pulse is essentially an insolvent company, she can only run it whilst there's interest. So that's whilst obviously we don't know when things will happen, but there's still interest, and that's positive.
That is definitely positive. You said in the statement that you published a few days ago that February funding had been realised, and that you thought that the expenditure for March would be covered by getting creative with the home matches and what you could do to raise funds with that. Contrary to suggestions on the dreaded social media, how reassured are you now that Pam Duxbury's salary wasn't excessive, and that she had been taking an actual reduced amount of salary?
Well, we were told, obviously we haven't seen the report from Nick Igo yet, so we can't confirm everything that has gone in the books, but we were told that, and I think we were fairly convinced by it, weren't we, that she had looked at various positions similar to hers and had agreed that she would take that, and then has virtually cut that since. Yeah. It's got as sticky as it has.
I think things tend to snowball on social media as well. The Swedish thing, the solicitor has an informal meeting with somebody from Sweden, and by the time it's hit the press the next day and it's hit the message boards the next day, the Swedish people are taking over and they're at the game and it's going to happen tomorrow. And I think that's probably why the club were keen to downplay that so that people don't get their hopes up. And again, with the Pam situation, there were reports on social media that she wasn't taking a salary at all from the club, which didn't seem logical to us. What she said to us was that her salary was on a par with people doing a similar job at similar sized clubs, and that recently she'd taken a reduction in salary. As Joe says, once we've seen the club books and the report from Nick Igo, we should have a better indication as to whether that's correct. But we've got no reason to disbelieve it, but we just wanted to set the record straight again, because we're seeing things on social media that don't add up. People are querying them, questioning and saying, why don't the Trust tell us this, why don't the Trust tell us that? So we asked the question, and that was the response we got.
Because there's a lot of innuendo, which is why, again, it's nice to do updates like this.
It's also got to remember, she is an employee of the club. She's entitled to a salary in the same way that all the other employees of the club are entitled to.
Absolutely. You say in your statement, and I quote, "We discussed the potential sanctions were the club to enter into administration, as the club and the Trust had differing views on this." What were the differing views between you?
So there are two stages basically for administration. There's a points deduction, and then there's coming out of administration. The points deduction was one of the areas that we disagreed on, and because there'd been some talk again on social media around if we get to the 22nd of March, which is the fourth Thursday of March, that we would then, if we could get to that point and then administration, we would defer the points to next season, and that's not the case. So that was our first disagreement, but we cleared that up in the meeting, and unfortunately the result is it doesn't matter when you go into administration during the season. The National League rules are very clear around when you take that deduction. If we finish in the relegation zone this season, we'll be relegated obviously, and we'll take the points next season. If we finish outside of the relegation zone this season, which who knows, then we'll take the points this season, and unfortunately a 10-point deduction versus our current performance will probably see us enter the relegation zone, and then we'll be relegated. The second side of it was around the payment of debts in administration, and that's much more severe. And unfortunately, if we were to not agree a company voluntary arrangement, a CVA, with our creditors for the full amount, we could be excluded from the National League.
Now the club's losing in the region of 200,000 a month. With the Trust's initiative to maximise home revenues and other money-raising events coming up, is it fair to say that Mr Blackledge, Pam Duxbury and the Trust are now working in fairly good harmony together?
No. No, it's a simple answer to that. I think the club was losing £200,000, allegedly. Last year, but I think those losses have been stemmed in part because there have been a large amount of cost cutting. But we spoke to John Blackledge, we spoke to Pam Duxbury. Both of them said that Mr Blackledge hadn't put a penny in since the end of November. So the club essentially at the moment is
running on empty.
Well, it's run on empty, but it's as close to self-sustaining as it can get.
Which is good.
It has no income from an owner, and that is what you would like a football club to be in the long term. It's self-sustaining. You know,
absolutely.
The money that they've got coming in covers what they've got going out.
It was also apparent that this 200k, as it was when they first came in, is the deficit has been reduced to about 130k a month, rather than 200k a month, so it has come down somewhat.
And with everybody rallying, that deficit is just on a par at the moment.
Well, no,
It's
there's still a big deficit. Still a big
Well,
deficit.
It's a deficit rather
no, but
than
the monthly running costs, we're almost okay.
No, still a big loss. This is where so Pam is working hard behind the scenes to look at what she can do around all the different revenue streams in the club. And this is where the idea or the part of our statement came from around the increase in the revenue from match days. So one of the things Pam said is two things need to happen at Pulse. We need to increase revenue and we need to decrease expenditure. And one of the things we offered to do in the meeting was to meet with Pam and say, well, look, we've got some ideas around what you can do as a club to maximise that revenue. So this is not the Supporters Trust saying we're going to raise money for you. This is us saying you're a private business, you're going to raise your own money, but we've got some ideas about how we think you can do that.
And was that welcomed?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So we're supporters of this club, and nobody can tell me that the Supporters Trust isn't 100% behind Hartlepool United.
Right.
That's what we're going to do. So we're not fundraising for the club, we're offering to support them by offering some ideas, some logistical support, some suggestions about what the club can do to maximise their revenue.
I mean, we think there's very little potential to get more money out of the town. You know,
are there other supporters
but yes,
doing initiatives or?
Yeah, I mean, what we need to do now is we need to go outside the town to the wider football community, to where the money is, because there's a lot of money at the top end of the game, and start shaming some of these people that have that money into helping out a club like ours that hasn't got money. So we've got ideas around how they can increase match day revenue, and some ideas on things they could do to get money from the wider football community. So as Richard said, we need to make this very, very clear. We are not going to raise funds for the club. We're not going to give money to the club, because constitutionally we can't unless we get something in return, either shares or a seat on the board. But what we can do is go to the club and say, look, here's some things that you haven't thought of, here's some ideas that we've got that haven't been used before. They may be able to raise revenue if you implement them, and we may help you out on the logistical side in doing that.
Okay. So how would you rate Mr Blackledge's performance?
Well, we did have a meeting set up with John and another investor in Leeds, which he cancelled at short notice because he had to meet somebody else. So we'd very much like to sit down and understand Mr Blackledge's point of view, how he sees things at the moment. He's obviously come into the football club as a property developer on the back of the Millhouse master plan, looking to make some money in property, and that's fallen through, and he's ended up losing money. But he now seems to be asking to get that money back. You know, he's saying he's invested in over £1 million in the football club, and he wants that back from whoever takes over. We as fans invest probably close to £1 million a season. You know, we buy our season tickets, merchandise, we attend fundraisers, we spend money inside the ground, we've had the Just Given donations. Unlike Mr Blackledge, we don't ask for our money back. We don't say, oh, I've lost, you know, we've put all this money in, the football's been rubbish and we're near the bottom of the table, can we have our season ticket money back? Can I take my shirt back and get a refund? So I think Mr Blackledge needs to be realistic about what he can expect to get on his return. You know, when he invested, we were a mid-table League 2 club. We're not. So he's not going to get 1.5 million for the football club. We could be in the Northern Premier League next season. We could be in the Northern League next season. Nobody's going to pay £1 million for a football club in that situation. So I think he needs to be realistic about what he can expect to get from it for the football club. So yeah, I mean, we'd love to sit down and understand what exactly he wants, because I don't think that's particularly clear at the moment. You know, we know he doesn't want to liquidate the club, because all he'll get is whatever he gets for the sale of fixture and fittings, which won't be very much. If he goes into administration, it's extremely unlikely that a buyer is going to give him, you know, all of his money. He might only get 25 pence in the pound.
And the downside of administration as well is because nobody's going to give him all of his money back, it's going to devalue his asset even further, because in all likelihood we'll be expelled from the league and we'll end up in the Northern Premier Division. So time is short.
Yes,
he needs to decide what he wants to do, and maybe he knows, but I'm not so sure that potential investors know.
But you'd love a meeting with him?
Yeah, because it's a dangerous game that he's playing. You know, he's essentially playing Russian roulette with a football club, because as Richard says, if we go into administration and he doesn't get what he wants, then we're either going to be liquidated and have to start as a Phoenix club, or he's going to get 25 pence in the pound, because the club will be, you know, outside of the national leagues and, you know, 3 or 4 seasons minimum away from getting back into the football league. So we need to understand, or we'd like him to explain to us what exactly he wants, what is his end game, where does he want to get to, because at the moment I don't think we understand, and I don't even think Pam understands from speaking to her.
Yeah.
Okay. Manager Craig Harrison has gone. Why, in your opinion, do you think Pools are still losing?
Once you start losing games, it's very difficult to break the habit. You just get used to losing, and when you go in front in games, you tend to panic and you don't expect to win games. It's a difficult cycle to break. You know, we've won 2 games in 4 months. When you're used to getting beat, you kind of expect to get beat.
Yes.
I think one of the problems again though is that we've got rid of the manager and the first team coach wasn't there, but we've just got somebody else that's been in the dugout all season taking over.
New.
So it doesn't really feel like a change. It doesn't feel like it's new. It just feels like it's more of the same.
Well, let's hope next match. And when can we expect the next update?
Well,
From
we've got a report that
Yes.
Nick Igo's done into the finances of the club. He's feeding that back to us on Thursday, so we should have an update from
Hopefully soon
for
after
the
that.
members by the end of this week. Now again, we've got a non-disclosure agreement, so there's an appendix to that agreement about all the things that we can't disclose.
Okay.
There are more general things that we can update on, the size of the debt, the forecast that the club has got for revenue, an indication as to where some of the money has gone, whether it's been spent sensibly, whether it's not been spent sensibly.
So everything crossed. Stay tuned for the next update.